Get up! A cool voice rang in Chuck Cannon's ears. The next second, the quilt on him was completely lifted. Chuck rubbed his eyes and looked at the women. He sighed and felt a little uncomfortable. The beautiful woman in front of him was Yevette Jordan, who was 4 or 5 years older than Chuck was. She was adopted by Chuck's grandfather and was groomed to be his bride since young. But since his grandfather's death, her attitude towards Chuck had become more and more terrible. "You useless piece of trash, your face even pisses me off." Yevette's beautiful face was full of disgust. Chuck frowned and tried not to take Yevette's words to heart. "Let me tell you, I have done my best to support you. If you don't behave yourself, I will chase you out of this house." Chuck put on his clothes and clenched his fists. "But you're my wifey." "No, I'm not. It was your grandfather who forced me to marry you. Did he ever ask me if I agreed? If I had a choice, how could I marry a good-for-nothing like you?" Chuck put on his clothes and stood in front of Yevette. "Wifey." "Don't call me wifey. I will warn you for the last time. The money that you use to eat and drink now is all mine. If you dare to call me wifey again, I will let you die on the streets." Yevette snorted coldly and looked at Chuck with disdain. "But I'm sure that a trash like you won't be able to survive on the streets for long." Since Grandpa left, such humiliation was no longer strange to Chuck. His fragile self-esteem had been almost crushed by Yevette. Sometimes Chuck even doubted whether he was really a piece of trash. Wifey, Yevette, I don't have any money." Chuck took a deep breath. He was just a freshman this year, and Yevette was not only a university lecturer but also owned a company. She was a rich person. "Look at yourself. You look like a beggar. It's disgusting." Yevette looked at Chuck disgustedly. Then she took out $200 from her bag and threw it on the ground. She turned around and left. Looking at the money on the ground, Chuck clenched his fists. In the end, he didn't pick up the money on the ground. He walked out of the house with his remaining self-esteem. Yevette's BMW drove out of the garage as Chuck stood by the roadside and watched. He was in the same university as Yevette, so they were heading in the same direction. However, Yevette's car didn't stop and drove past. "Get out of here and take the bus. A piece of trash doesn't deserve to ride my car." After saying that, Yevette stepped on the accelerator and left. Chuck gritted his teeth and looked at the BMW that had disappeared at the end of the road. His eyes were slightly red. "Yevette, you have gone too far." He was penniless now. His lunch money these days was borrowed by his classmates, and today was the day for him to return the money. Unfortunately, the $200 were too burdensome, and he couldn't pick it up. When he arrived at school, his worst fears came true. As soon as he walked to the school gate, Chuck happened to meet a student who lent money to him. Lara Jean was buying milk tea outside the school gate. When she saw Chuck, who was in a state of loss, she reached out and said, "Chuck, it's time to pay back the money, isn't it?" Chuck wanted to bury himself out of the shame. He scratched his hair and said with embarrassment, "Well, give me one more day. I will do part-time work. I will pay you back the money latest by tomorrow." "No. How long have you been delayed?" "You have to return the money to me today," Lara said coldly, and there was no room for negotiation in her tone. Chuck sighed, "But I really don't have any money now." "You don't have money to ask your parents for it. Are you an orphan?" "You..." Chuck clenched his fist tightly. For as long as he could remember, he had been living with his grandfather. He had never seen his parents before. However, being called an orphan by Lara made him feel even more uncomfortable. You were really an orphan? Well, I will give you an extension until this afternoon. But you have to pay me 400. If you don't pay me back, I will ask my boyfriend to bring someone to deal with you. Lara warned and left. Chuck stood still in his tracks. He was extremely sad. He had enough of such humiliation. Just as Chuck was thinking about what part-time job he was going to do, his phone rang. Chuck looked at the caller ID and saw that it turned out to be a foreign number. He was afraid that it was probably a swindler. However, when he thought of the outline recruitment of mercenaries in Syria, which was quite popular recently, offering $8,000 a day, he became interested again. Although he knew it could be a scam. If it was true, he would definitely go to Syria without hesitation. Hello, Chuck greeted. Unexpectedly, a flurry of words in Mandarin from on the other end of the phone. Chucky, I'm your mother. Chuck was stunned. He first felt that he had been made fun of others. But then he felt extremely sad. How could he have a mother? Chucky, don't blame me. I had no choice but to go abroad these years. But now I can finally return home. I will try my best to make up for the lost time with you. I will transfer $5 million and you can use it first. If it is all spent, call me. The strange conversation ended in a wired atmosphere. As soon as the call ended, a message arrived. Your account with the ending number 0123 has been credited with $5 million. And the current balance is $5 million.83. Chuck was dumbfounded. His mother, whom he had never seen before, actually gave him $5 million? He looked at the text message and counted the zeros again and again, repeatedly confirming it more than a dozen times. And then he went to the ATM machine to check if it was correct. He was ecstatic. That was $5 million. What more, it was his mysterious mother who casually gave him pocket money. Even Yevette, who was busy with her business, has less than $1 million including her car and her savings. Chuck giggled and walked to the campus. At this time, Yevette, who was going to the public building for class, said with disgust after seeing Chuck, "Why aren't you in class but instead laughing here stupidly?" "I'm not going to class anymore." Chuck stood where he was and watched Yevette quietly. Yevette felt a little strange. She seemed to see a confident look in Chuck's eyes. Isn't he still a useless piece of trash? How dare he argue with her? Yevette was angry. How dare you talk back to me? If you have the guts, don't come to my house today. Chuck was also tired of being treated coldly by Yevette. He said disdainfully, "I'm not going back. I will sleep elsewhere." Is this a joke? Now that I have $5 million, I don't need to look at Yevette's unhappy face anymore. Chuck thought of himself. You're great. I would like to see how brave you are. From now on, if you dare to enter my house again, I will break your legs. Chuck ignored Yevette and directly turned his back and left the school. Yevette stomped her feet angrily, but she couldn't do anything about it. So she turned around and went to class. Chuck, who had left school, took a taxi to the real estate agency in the city center. With this sum of money, the first thing Chuck wanted to do was to have his own house. After pushing the door open and entering, the real estate agency employees didn't pay attention to Chuck, who was dressed ordinarily. This kind of person was either looking for a part-time job, begging for food, or the type who wasn't interested in buying anything but just trying to enjoy the air conditioned room. Later, when the manager of the store came out of the office, those lazy employees hurried up and asked, "Sir, what do you need?" "To buy a house." "To buy a house?" Natalie Xavier's big eyes narrowed. She stared at Chuck carefully for a long time. She had been a real estate agent for so long, but she had rarely misjudged someone. There may be 1 in 1,000 customers who would buy a house at less than 20 years old like Chuck, but all of them wore branded suits and drove high-end sports cars. "Sir, for your information, the cheapest house in the city is around 12,000 per square meter. Are you sure you want to buy it?" Natalie didn't want to waste time on this kind of person, so her tone became impatient. "Yes, The cheapest one is $12,000, which means that a house of 100 square meter cost about $1 million. Even the smallest apartment house cost $50,000 or $60,000. You must listen carefully, sir." Natalie Xavier was very dismissive of this kind of person who was overconfident and maliciously delayed time. "Well, Chuck Cannon didn't finish his words. At this time, a pot-bellied man walked into the real estate agency. The gold necklace on his neck was thicker than his fingers, and he looked like a rich man at first glance. Natalie immediately chose to leave Chuck aside and greeted the man with a smile. It was totally different from the way she treated Chuck. When Natalie saw the fat man, she immediately put on a happy smile. "Sir, do you want to buy a house?" "Yes, I want to buy a house. Introduce some high-quality housing sources to me." Natalie smiled even more happily. Yes, we have plenty of high-quality rooms here for you with our high-end service. Unlike some people who come to us even when they can't afford it, it's a waste of time." Natalie gave Chuck a disdainful look as she spoke, implying and cursing him. Chuck looked at Natalie's attitude and felt disheartened. He was used to being looked down upon. At that time, he didn't dare to say anything without money. But this time he had $5 million. How could he swallow such humiliation? "Where is your manager? Call your manager over." Hearing Chuck's words, Natalie sneered and said, "Do people like you still have the right to meet our manager? Don't make a fool of yourself here. Get out of here. Do you know that wasting 1 minute of our time will affect how much money we make?" The manager walked over slowly at this time. As a service industry, it was a big taboo to be rude to guests. "What's going on, Natalie?" Natalie hurriedly explained. "Manager, this broke idiot isn't trying to buy a house, but instead he's enjoying the air conditioning here. I will get him out of here immediately." The manager eyeballed Chuck's clothes from top to bottom and saw that he was dressed in ordinary clothes. Indeed, as Natalie said, he didn't look like someone who could afford to buy a house. More importantly, he was too young to buy a house, and he looked just 18 or 19 years old. No one would believe he had the ability to. Chuck didn't say anything. He stood up and walked to the agency next door. "Can't afford a house? It seems that you are not the only real estate agency here." Natalie looked down on him. "How is a poor person like you able to buy a house? I think you can't even afford a toilet." Some employees also laughed at him. He is afraid of making a fool of himself, so he found an excuse to run away quickly. He said he wanted to go to next door, but he could possibly just be trying to take advantage of the air condition there too. Still pretending even when you were gone? Natalie sneered. They were familiar with the next door real estate agency, and they also knew whether they could sell it or not. After watching Chuck leave, Natalie hurriedly ran to the fatty and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, boss. Sorry to keep you waiting. The fatty shook his head and said, It's okay, it's okay. However, no matter how Natalie greeted him with a smile, the fatty never talked about money. In the end, Natalie's patience was exhausted and she even began to plead. At this moment, all the employees of the real estate agency looked outside. Under the respectful guidance of the staff next door, Chuck got into the Mercedes Benz, which was specially used to look at the room. What was going on? Generally speaking, only people who bought a house could enter this car. Didn't the next door real estate agency see that this little rascal didn't have the ability to buy a house at all? The fatty saw that these people in the real estate agency were distracted, so he quickly sneaked out. Natalie turned around and looked at the customer who had disappeared. She was so angry that she stomped her feet. She didn't expect that the fatty who was putting on airs and graces was actually here just to enjoy the air conditioner. Natalie Xavier looked at Chuck and disliked him even more. She sneered and said, Such a pretentious person and even imitating others to inspect a house. At this time, an employee next door came quickly. He pushed the door open and said with a smile, Thank you. You sent such an important customer to our company. We haven't run into any big business in the past 2 years. Today is a big day. Important customer? The manager's face darkened and he hurriedly asked, What did he buy? He bought a house worth more than $3 million with a deposit of $1 million. This business should be successful. Thank you. I will treat you to a cup of milk tea later. After that, the employee got on the Mercedes Benz and took Chuck to take a look at the house. Really? Bought it? Natalie's face was full of disbelief. Looking at Chuck, who was sitting in the Mercedes Benz with a smile on his face, Natalie felt very uncomfortable. How could it be possible? He's so poor. How could he possibly afford to buy a house? Smack. Before she could blame herself, the manager raised his hand and slapped her in the face. His eyes were almost bursting out flames. Look at what you have done. If the transaction is successful, the employees who have dealt with him will be given a 5% commission, which would be around $150,000. As for the manager, he would have gotten a 10% commission amounting to $300,000. But now, the manager trembled with anger when he thought of the commission of $300,000. He kicked Natalie again and said, Get out, you are fired. Natalie was also losing her mind. Ignoring the pain on her body, she quickly got up from the ground and ran outside. Then, throwing herself whole at the BMW, she knocked on the window repeatedly and looked at Chuck. Sir, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I failed to recognize your wealth before and I'm a snob. Please give me another chance. We have better houses here. Chuck shook his head and said, It's all right. You can save it for the other customers. After that, the Mercedes Benz started up in a hurry. Natalie chased after him all the way and finally sat down on the ground. She looked weakly at the Mercedes Benz getting farther and farther away. Third, the manager threw Natalie's personal belongings out of the door and yelled at her, Get out of here. Don't let me see you again. Chuck Cannon was quite satisfied with the house. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 living rooms and 2 bathrooms. Located in the downtown area, the business district was more prosperous and there was a lot of room for renovation. $3.5 million was paid in a lump sum graciously. The salesman had not seen such a rich man for a long time, and his face was full of admiration and envy. He then took the initiative to send Chuck back to university. When he arrived at the gate, Chuck nodded and said, "You can drop me off here." The salesman smiled respectfully and said, "All right, take your time, good sir. The process of transferring the house should be completed tomorrow, and you should be able to move in the day after tomorrow." Okay. Chuck nodded and decided to stay at the nearest hotel for the time being for the next 2 days. However, he wanted to know what Yevette Jordan would feel if she saw that this house was 3 or 4 times bigger than hers. When they arrived at the gate, Chuck first took out $20,000 before strolling into the university. There were not many classes in the afternoon, but Chuck had already been absent for a whole class because he had been held up outside for a while. Seeing Chuck walking into the classroom, Lara Jean sneered. "Oh, who is this? Isn't this Chuck, the beggar of our class? I'm telling you, don't lend your money to such a person. When you lend him money, he acts as though you are his savior and bows to you. However, when you try to get the money back from him, he acts shamelessly like a scam trying to cheat off your money. Speaking of which, he hasn't even paid me back until now. Oh, this guy doesn't have parents. Who knows which bastard he learned this tactics from?" The whole class burst into laughter. They all knew that Chuck Cannon was a poor man, as he only seemed to wear 2 different shirts all year around. Although there was no strange smell, the clothes were already so faded and torn that they were simply unsightly. Someone asked, "Lara Jean, how much does he owe you?" $400. "It's only a day's expense for me, but for him, maybe a month. Putting aside how much he owes me, this kind of person is really disgusting. He doesn't even deserve to lick my shoes." Chuck's expression was indifferent. He looked at Laura and took out $400 from his bag, saying, "I will return you the money now. I was really grateful when you were willing to lend me some money. When I was starving, but you just slandered me. Let's call it even now." Lara frowned and looked at the $400 in his hand. She asked coldly, "Where did you get the money? Did you steal it or rob it?" Someone said, "Let's look at our pockets to see if we are short of money." "I earned it myself," Chuck said calmly. "You?" Lara sneered and said, "Why don't you look in the mirror before saying something so outrageous? How can you earn yourself $400 in the morning? Did you sell your body or something?" The whole class burst into laughter and said, "I'm afraid that this guy is not worth so much money even if he goes to sell his body." Seeing as so many students laughed at him in the classroom, Chuck sighed and sat back in his seat. "Lara, you should be easier on people." Lara snorted and put the money away. "Then tell me what you have done. Answer some of our questions." Chuck frowned for a long time and made up an excuse. He said casually, "I picked up the money." "Oh, lucky," Lara smirked, her malicious tone showing some envy. The other students also asked with jealousy, "Hey, how much did you pick up?" Many people were interested and asked one after another, "Yes, tell me, how much did you pick up?" Chuck was speechless. He stared back at his classmates and continued to lie. 2,000. "What? You actually picked up 2,000? Damn it, that's my living expenses for more than a month." All the students were surprised and envied him very much. If they had his luck and picked up $2,000, their lives would be much more comfortable and easier. You suck, picking up other people's money and claiming them as yours? Such an embarrassment of our class. When his classmates ridiculed Chuck because of jealousy, Queenie Carson was the only one who stood up for him in the class. But Chuck didn't care about such gossip and rumors, so he just let them talk about it. After class, Chuck went to Yevette Jordan's staff room. Because there was no class in the afternoon, Yevette was listening to music in the staff room. When she saw Chuck, her expression soared. "What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you you were not allowed to look for me in between classes?" Chuck said with a worried smile, "I just want to tell you that I'm going to move out today." "You want to move out? Are you kidding?" Yevette sneered. Since young, she had grown up with Chuck, knowing him like the back of her hand. How could he move out? Does he want to sleep on the street? But he had been timid since he was a child, even insisting to use her as his body pillow when he's sleeping. If it weren't for the death of his grandfather, God knows how much longer she wouldn't have to be hugged by him to sleep. Such a person sleeping on the street, he wouldn't dare to do that even if he had 10 times the courage. "I'm not joking with you. I will move out today," Chuck said seriously. "Well, I would like to see how long you can. Don't come back begging to me like a dog." "I won't." After Chuck finished speaking, he turned around and left the office. Yevette stared at his living figure thoughtfully. In the past, no matter how much she scolded him, he would not dare to talk back. She didn't know what happened to do him today. All of a sudden, her phone rang. After picking up the phone, she quickly changed her tone and answered, "Hello, Director Chester. What happened for you to suddenly call me up like this?" A middle-aged man's voice could be heard from the other end of the phone. "Yevette, I heard that your training company's business is not good recently. Do you want me to introduce some business to you?" Yevette's heart was filled with joy. Her recent business in the training company could be said to be so poor. It was already very difficult for her to make any progress. If she didn't show any improvement again, she was afraid that she would have to close the company in half a year. She had already lost more than $100,000 in the past 2 months. It was also because of this that she was recently venting all her anger on Chuck. After hearing Director Chester's business proposals, a smile appeared on her face. "Yes, thank you for taking care of me, Director Chester. Well, room number 1218 in the Triumph Hotel tonight. Come over." "A hotel?" Yevette was a little scared. "Director Chester, why don't I treat you to a 5-star hotel dinner in the urban area? A hotel—" "What's wrong? You don't even give me face?" No, it's just a hotel." Instantly, a steel-cold voice was heard from the phone. Forget it if you don't come. This business is given by my friend's company as his employees need to be trained. You should know how much money you can make up from a big company with 50 to 60 people. If you don't come, I won't force you." Yevette was very conflicted. She didn't want to go, but she didn't want to waste this opportunity either. Just when she had wanted to negotiate, he hung up all of a sudden. "If I don't take the deal, I'm afraid that I will be going bankrupt." She decided to take the risk. After leaving school, she drove home, planning to simply tidy up and change her clothes. However, when she had just arrived at the door of the house, she saw Chuck coming out of the house with a suitcase. The two of them looked at each other. Chuck said, "Wifey." As soon as he spoke, Yevette interrupted him with disgust. Don't call me like that. Yevette, no matter what, you have been taking care of me for almost a year after Grandpa's death. If you... Yevette snorted and said, What's wrong? Do you regret it? Do you want me to give you a chance? Yevette sneered impatiently. No, I mean if you have any difficulties in the future, you can tell me. Chuck nodded before walking past Yevette. After all, he and Yevette had been sleeping in the same bed for so long. He still had some feelings for her in his heart. Yevette was also absent-minded for a moment. She didn't expect that this man, whom she looked down upon the most, would say such comforting words today. It was as though in a trance she had found someone to rely upon. But then she smiled coldly and said, Tell you? What good would it bring me to tell you? Can you give me money or bring me some customers? You can't give me anything and you can't even afford a meal yet you want me to tell you? Chuck shrugged. She still had more than $1 million in his hand. Even if it was not enough, he still had his mother. The money would be transferred to his account with just a phone call. If you need money, I can give it to you. Yevette feebly waved her hand and sneered. You'd better keep the money for yourself to buy instant noodles. Chuck didn't defend himself. He left with his suitcase. Chuck walked with his suitcase for a while. After inquiring about the hotels nearby, he got on a taxi and went to the Triumph Hotel. The magnificent buildings, the glorious decorations, and the luxurious European interior shocked him to his core. This was the busiest hotel in the city, which cheapest standard hotel rooms cost at least $800. In the past, Chuck didn't dare to think that he could spend in such a place. But now it was different. When Chuck was about to go in, he saw Yevette's car swerving in and parking itself in the parking lot. Chuck was so shocked that he hid aside in a hurry. This is a hotel. What is she doing here? Chuck felt extremely bitter in his heart. Is his wifey going to sleep with another man? Although the two of them didn't get a marriage certificate, it was just Grandpa's arrangement. He felt very uncomfortable when he thought that the woman he once held in his arms was going to sleep with others. After Yevette went in, Chuck took his luggage and walked in. As soon as he entered the door, he heard a strange voice saying, Oh my God, who is this? Isn't this Chuck? Chuck turned his head and found Lara strolling in with her boyfriend, Conrad Lee, in her arms. Lara's face was full of scorn, as if Chuck was not qualified to come to such a high-end hotel. Who is this? Conrad glanced at Chuck and asked casually. Chuck Cannon, my classmate. I'm telling you, this person picked up $2,000, but he didn't return it and instead spent it himself. I really admire this kind of person. Conrad glanced at Chuck, the corners of his mouth twitching in sarcasm. Haha, maybe such a trash hasn't seen $2,000 before. Don't talk nonsense with this kind of rubbish. Let's go in quickly, my dear. Lara held Conrad's arm tightly in her arms, as if she couldn't wait to enter the hotel. Chuck frowned slightly and ignored them, dragging his luggage into the hotel. A standard room, please. Conrad took out his identity card and Lara followed suit shyly. The pretty staff at the front desk checked on the hotel's database and said, I'm sorry, today's standard room has been fully booked. Ah, Lara's face was full of dissatisfaction and loss. Conrad continued to ask, how about a larger room? I'm really sorry. The pretty staff at the front desk checked again, her tone extremely apologetic. Only the presidential suit is currently available. Conrad probed carefully. The presidential suit? How much is that? He said so in an hesitant tone. For them, they would usually get a standard room that cost a few $100s every time they got a room. As students, it was already pretty extravagant for them to spend a few $100s like this. Yes, it's $8,888 for the presidential suit. Conrad shook his head hurriedly. It's way too expensive. Forget it, let's go find another hotel. Lara muttered and pulled Conrad out. But before they went out, they saw Chuck walking to the front desk. This rubbish really thinks that he's rich after picking up $2,000. Just look at his beggar-looking clothes. How dare he try to book a room in this kind of place? Lara sneered. Conrad also sneered. He was pretty sure that this guy had most $2,000 on him. He would definitely be shocked to death once he heard the price for a night in the presidential suit. However, how's that even possible? Conrad's mind was filled with doubt as he watched Jack walking towards the elevator with the room card in his hand. What's going on? Wasn't there no standard room? How did that trash Jack Cannon manage to get a room? Lara Jean saw it too, and she became more and more annoyed. She walked quickly to the front desk and patted it hard, asking defiantly, Hey, didn't you just say that there was no standard room left? Why did you let the person book one then? Call your manager. I'm going to make a complaint that you were cheating your customers. Conrad's face was cold too. After all, he was a VIP member of this hotel. How could he be fooled by such a receptionist? He was full of anger. Hurry up and call out your manager. The girl at the front desk was stunned. After a long pause, she said helplessly, You two misunderstood me. The standard rooms are indeed all fully booked. The room that the person has booked just now is the presidential suite. How is it possible? Lara's face changed. Before she retorted hurriedly, It's impossible. How can that broke idiot afford to book a presidential suite? The girl at the front desk handed over the receipt which was issued just now. When the two of them saw the payment fee, their face changed dramatically. Could it be that he picked up more than $2,000? Probably $20,000? Conrad could only think of such a possibility. It's very likely. Lara was even more jealous. That broke idiot actually picked up $20,000. This was almost her living expenses for 1 year. What a stroke of luck. He is really good at spending money, picking up $20,000 and spending half of it lavishly. Such a spendthrift. Lara was bitter and her face was full of discontent. Idiots are still idiots. He probably thinks that he is rich with that little sum of money. $20,000 is my dad's income for 3 or 4 days. But my dad will never waste it by booking a presidential suite. How dare a broke idiot like him even spend his slim stroke of luck like this? Hilarious. Conrad laughed disdainfully. Chuck placed his luggage in his room and went downstairs to it. When Lara saw Chuck coming down from the elevator, she thought of something and whispered, This loser likes to show off, right? Why don't you play around with him for a while? Conrad was puzzled. But how? Lara smiled and shouted at Chuck, Hey, Chuck! Hearing the sound from the front desk, he was stunned to find out the two people had not left yet. Where are you going? Lara asked. Chuck replied, To get something to eat. Eat? Lara was contemplating silently. For a trash like Chuck, he would probably prefer fast food on the streets even after living luxuriously. After all, he was still part of the low-class commoners who'd never be able to climb up the ladders of wealth. She coughed and said seriously, Chuck, I lent you money and you haven't thanked me, have you? Although Jack was disgusted by Lara's words, he still nodded calmly. Although he had borrowed $200 from her and was eventually forced to pay back $400 instead, it was evident that without the $200 he would have starved long ago. Thanking you is what I should do. Lara sneered and continued, My boyfriend I haven't eaten yet. Would you like to invite us to have a meal in this hotel? Chuck nodded. Okay. He took the bait. Lara and Conrad looked at each other. They had eaten here before. Although they ordered the most ordinary dishes, it cost at least $1,000 for just a few dishes. 3 people would cost at least $2,000. Chuck no doubt loves to show off. He even straight up agreed to it. Thanks. Let's go then. I'm so hungry. Lara smiled while holding Conrad's arm and walked to the restaurant. Chuck followed them. The 3 of them found a place in the restaurant and sat down. Soon the waiter came over with the menu and said, Good evening. We have a Friday special offer of set dishes here. 3 meat dishes, 1 vegetarian dish and 1 soup at only $888. Would you like to think about it? The waiter knew that the 3 of them were all students, so he recommended a cheaper option for them. Lara shook her head hurriedly and pouted. I don't want to have set dishes. I don't want it either, Conrad agreed. Lara looked at Chuck and asked cunningly, Chuck, to thank me, you won't just treat me to set dishes, will you? Chuck said casually, Well, you can order whatever you like. Seriously? Whatever I like? Lara snorted and rolled her eyes. How much do you actually have to ask me to simply order whatever I like? So pretentious. Lara, of course, was more than happy to hear so. She took the menu and pointed at whatever she liked. She ordered a total of 7 dishes, and at this point even the waiter's expression was a little strange. These dishes were all Triumph Hotel's expensive recommended dishes, costing them around $4,000 to $5,000 in total. Judging that they were students, how could they afford such expensive dishes? He confirmed once more, Are you sure you want to order so much? Each dish in Triumph Hotel is not only of high quality but also of great quantity. Generally speaking, 4 or 5 dishes should be enough for 3 people. Lara looked at Chuck, attempting to sense panic from his expression. She smiled and asked, I will confirm if you don't have anything else to add on. Chuck nodded casually. Yep, that's all. The waiter took a look at Chuck with full of sympathy. At first glance, he knew that Chuck had been ruthlessly conned. Yet he had no choice but to take the menu and leave. Soon the dishes were served. There were a lot of dishes and the 3 of them definitely could not finish them all. Lara ate only 2 pieces of beef before getting a more evil idea. Chuck, it seems I ordered too many dishes. Since there are such a lot of dishes here, would you mind if I ask a few friends to come over and eat together? It will be livelier, Chuck said indifferently. Well, it's up to you. Lara looked at Chuck's calm face and sneered in her heart. At this time, he still pretended to be generous. Since there's going to be more people later, it will be alright if we add on a few more dishes, right? Chuck nodded. Lara and Conrad looked at each other and chuckled. Then they buried their heads in their meals and continued to eat. Not long after, 2 beautiful women came with their boyfriends. Chuck knew these 2 beauties. One was called Moon Cherries and the other was called Tia Thomas. However, he didn't know the two men. The two of them rushed over after hearing Lara claiming that there was an idiot treating them to food at Tribe Hotel. When they came and realized that the idiot was Chuck Cannon, their faces were full of surprise. Tia sat down and whispered in Lara's ear, "Isn't this Chuck? Does he even have money?" Lara said in a low voice, "This idiot has a stroke of luck since he picked up a lot of money." Saying this, Lara called over the waiter. The newly came 4 people ordered dishes, which costed around 4 or 5,000. All the dishes cost more than 10,000, and Chuck was pretty sure already dying inside. Lara gloated at Chuck's misery. The dishes were soon served. The 3 couples were eating happily. However, no one spoke to Chuck as they isolated him completely. Chuck had nothing to say either and ate his own food quietly. After a while, since he was almost done with the meal, he called the waiter over. The waiter rushed over with the bill and said respectfully, "Sir, the total is $9,302. She looked at Chuck, who was dressed cheaply, and wondered how he was going to pay. Lara, Conrad, and the 4 who came afterward looked at Chuck maliciously. They were so happy since they wanted to see him make a fool of himself. However, Chuck took out 10,000 in cash from his bag and Lara's eyes shut open. Sure enough, he had picked up $20,000. Conrad and the others was full of bitterness, but even if he was lucky, what could he do? Today they would force him to spend everything. Chuck took out $3,000 calmly and handed it over to the waiter. After that, he stopped taking out any money anymore. Everyone was stunned and puzzled. The waiter said, "Sir, this is $3,000. It's not enough." Lara said, "Yeah, it's $9,300. What's wrong with that? You lent me some money. It's very reasonable for me to treat you." Chuck said calmly, "But who are these people? I don't know them. What does their meal have to do with me?" "What the fuck are you saying? Didn't you say it was your treat? I even asked you before ordering, didn't I? When I invited people over, you also agreed to it. And now you are trying to pretend nothing happened?" Lara Jean was furious and pointed angrily at Shah Cannon. Conrad Lee's face darkened. Moon Cherish, Tia Thomas and their boyfriends didn't look well either. They just came here for a free meal and didn't want to pay a penny. Unexpectedly, they encountered such a thing. Lara cried out suddenly and everyone in the restaurant stared at them. They felt so embarrassed. "You have lent me some money, so it's reasonable for me to treat you. Now that I have treated you, you should settle the rest by yourself. I don't know these people, and I don't have the interest of treating strangers." Chuck stood up. Lara was so angry and she was going crazy. "Fuck you, are you trying to play tricks on us?" Conrad glared at Chuck. Was he being forced to pay the remaining $6,000 himself? "I'm sorry, but I don't know you." Chuck looked at Conrad. He wouldn't have dared to do that previously, but now that he had money, he wasn't afraid of anyone. Conrad stared at Chuck, clenching his fist, but he frowned. Chuck, who used to be timid, was not afraid of him. This kind of calmness. "Loser, putting on yours? You don't have money to pay for this meal?" Lara burst out in fury. "This person is just reluctant to pay. He did it on purpose. This sort of person even exists? If you don't have money, don't put on yours then. Huh. This is such a disgusting attitude." Moon shook her head angrily. Being looked at by people around her made her feel so ashamed. That's right. What kind of person are you? You refuse to pay for a treat? How could there such a shameless person like you? It sickens me. Tia was not polite at all. Lara continued chasing Chuck in a blast of rage. You have the guts to dupe me? No matter what, you have to pay, whether you want to or not. In that case, that means you will treat everyone here to a meal? Chuck chuckled. His calmness surprised the people around him. Damn it, are you deaf? When did I say that I will treat them? Do I know them? Why should I treat them? I asked you to pay for us. Lara was so angry that her face turned scarlet. You say you don't want to treat everyone here because you don't know them. Then why should I treat your friends to a meal? Do I know them? Chuck retorted sharply. You! Lara's face was as red as blood. She was going crazy. Moon and Tia's expression twitched. They were angry as well, but they were rendered speechless. Poor fuck. You are going to be a poor fuck. Lara cursed incoherently. However, she was immediately shocked by her own words. Chuck glanced at her. A poor fuck? If she knew that his mother had given him $5 million casually, would she still think he was a poor fuck? The corner of Chuck's mouth curled up and he accidentally broke a bowl. With a bang, the bowl was smashed to pieces on the ground. Ah, sir, are you okay? The waiter asked in a hurry. It was normal for restaurants to break their bowls, but it was a taboo for customers to be hurt by it. I'm fine. I'm sorry for breaking a bowl. As compensation, keep this. Chuck placed all the remaining money into the hands of the dumbfounded waiter. Sir, this... The waiter was stunned. It was just a bowl and this guest compensated over $7,000. The customers around them were shocked. A $7,000 bowl? And this was still considered poor? He was totally a baller. Conrad's eyes widened in disbelief. How could he spend $7,000 on a bowl that probably cost only $3 or $4? Did he really pick up just $20,000? Moon and Tia was more dumbfounded. $8,000 was their living expenses for 2 months. How could he just give it away like that? While everyone was stunned, Chuck Cannon had already started walking out. Ah, Chuck, damn it, go to hell. You rather give it to others than me? Lara Jean screamed. Lara, what should we do now? We don't have money. Tia Thomas immediately said. Yeah, my boyfriend and I didn't bring money neither. Mooncherry shouted immediately. Lara was so angry that she gnashed her teeth in annoyance. She glared at them, took out a credit card while gritting her teeth, and squeezed out 3 words from her mouth. Pay by card. Moon and Tia heaved a sigh of relief. The waiter came to his senses and went to the front desk with a stack of money and a credit card in his hand. He had used almost $18,000. I would like to see how long will this bastard take to spend the $20,000 he picked up. Lara was so frustrated her nails sunk deeply in the flesh of her palm. He is so pretentious. It's likely that he will spend all his money today. He won't be able to show off for a long time. He will surely ask you to borrow money to him like a dog when he runs out of money. At that time, don't lend him a cent even if he kneels to you, Conrad Lee said coldly. Kneel? I won't lend him any money even if he calls me mom. Lara was furious. He's just a pathetic dog. Once he has no money, he will definitely come to ask you, Lara, for your help. Then you can embarrass him. Tia said added. Yes, Lara, don't be angry. Why should you be angry with such a person? He didn't even want to settle a single bill easily and rather spend $8,000 to buy a broken bowl than to pay the bill. I really hated such a person, Mona shouted. Don't be angry, it's $6,000. My dad is going to curse me to death. No, I must ask him for the money. Lara's eyes were glared firmly in the direction which Chuck had left. What are we going to do then? Conrad asked. He dares toy with me? I will teach him a lesson, Lara remarked coldly. Chuck took the elevator back to his room. In fact, he didn't feel good deep down because Yevette Jordan was also in this hotel now. Although she had been scolding him all the time, Chuck had been sleeping with her for more than 10 years. Moreover, after Grandpa died, she had spent money to raise him, and Chuck still had feelings for her. He wanted to find out which room Yevette was in, but unfortunately he couldn't find her. When he was about to go back to the room, he suddenly saw Yevette running out drowsily from around the corner. Her face was red as if she was drunk. Two larger men were smiling at each other evilly while taking Yevette back to her room. No, I'm going back. I already drunk. Yevette covered her chest with her hands and was about to puke. She was very unwell. After seeing this, Chuck hurriedly hid aside. These two wretched men pulled Yevette into a room while saying, If you are drunk, let us take care of you. Don't worry and just enjoy yourself. Haha, I can't wait any longer. This bitch was still pretending just now. Continue pretending while you still can. I will give you the time for your life in just a moment. The other man smirked leisurously as he was also pulled Yevette into the room. I'm going back. You said that you will introduce me to a business if I drink. You help me. Yevette still managed to remain sober despite drinking a lot. But the alcohol had chapped her dry of her remaining strength to break free from their grasp. I'm giving you some business now, am I not? How can I introduce the business to you if you don't let our two brothers have some fun with you? Say no more, just drag her in. Chuck clenched her fists. No matter what happened, Yevette was still his wife. He was very angry. He immediately rushed over and shouted, Stop! The two men were not doing anything glorious anyway, thus they were startled by Chuck's sudden roar. However, when they saw his young appearance, they immediately calmed down and said, What does it have to do with you? Be careful and scream, or else I will find someone to mess with you now. Get out of here, do you hear me? Another man threatened him viciously. Chuck took out his mobile phone. I called the police. Fuck you. The two men looked at each other, panicked. They gritted their teeth and said, Hey, I will remember you. Let's go. The two men left quickly. Chuck breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Yevette, who was struggling in a daze on the ground. Without a choice, he carried her into the room and blocked the door with a chair to prevent them from coming back. Don't touch me, you bastard. Yevette struggled strongly. Chuck attempted to carry her to the bed, but amongst all the struggling he fell on top of her instead, his hands accidentally filling up her chest. Instantly his face turned beet red, and he hurriedly got up from her. Soon after, Yevette fell asleep while struggling. Chuck covered her with the quilt and stared at this familiar face. Yevette was indeed gorgeous. In the olden days, Yevette would deliberately hug Chuck so tightly against her chest. Sadly, that happened 7 or 8 years ago, when he didn't know anything. But now that he knew, Yevette wouldn't let him touch her again. Chuck continued staring at Yevette, who was also sound asleep, and sighed, and he stood up and prepared to leave. She suddenly screamed out, Chuck! Chuck was startled. Didn't she fall asleep? However, Chuck Cannon took out Yevette Jordan's mobile phone, opened her WeChat, and added himself with it. Chuck's current WeChat account was a blank slate with no friends added ever since he opened his account. Yevette would never know it was Chuck's WeChat account. There must have been something wrong with Yevette's trading company. Otherwise, she would not have come here to drink. If she needed money, Chuck would not mind transferring it to her. After helping her accepting his WeChat friend request, Chuck left. Chuck took a shower and wanted to sleep after returning to his room. When dawn broke, he had already checked out early. He had to go to the real estate agency to settle the house procedure today. My head hurts. She tried hard and recalled someone shouting loudly. Yes, that's it. Someone must have saved her, right? It must be so. Yevette gave a sigh of relief. She put on her clothes and sat on the bed. Sighing again, she decided it was probably time to transfer the ownership of her company to someone else. She didn't want to go through last night's incident again. Ding! Yevette turned on her phone as she received a WeChat message. It was actually a stranger's WeChat account, whose name was Baller. Is it really a baller? Are you awake? After seeing this message, Yevette was surprised. This person must have saved her last night and then added her on WeChat. She immediately replied, Hey, did you save me last night? Well, sort of. Thank you. Do I know you? Yevette asked. No. Then how can I thank you? If it weren't for you last night, I would have been 3 crying face emojis sent. You don't have to thank me, but I have to remind you not to stay over with others in a hotel. It's too dangerous. Thank you. There was something wrong with my company, that's why, Yevette replied. The man didn't reply for 20 seconds and Yevette sighed. He probably thought that she was an easy woman, so he ignored her. However, she still thanked him in her heart and wanted to see this man. Yevette put down her mobile phone, but ding, the baller transferred $100,000. Yevette was dumbfounded. This guy actually transferred $100,000 to me. She was stunned and replied in a hurry. What are you doing, baller? Isn't your company facing difficulties? Then I will transfer the money to you so you don't have to drink with others anymore. Yevette doubled confirmed that she did not mistakenly read the message. She took a deep breath and replied, Thank you, baller, but you saved me last night, and I haven't even thanked you. How can I take your money? The other party did not respond. But 10 seconds, ding, the baller transferred $100,000 again. Yevette was completely shocked. Is this guy really a baller? If so, when did she ever know such a guy like this? Yevette felt puzzled and clicked on his profile. She wanted to see his album, but she didn't find anything. Who was this guy? Thank you, but really it's fine. I will solve my own problems. Yevette finally replied after some thinking. This man gave her $200,000 out of sudden. She couldn't accept it, and she didn't dare to accept it. Well, if you are in trouble, you can contact me. Seeing the message, Yevette put down the phone in bewilderment after replying a thanks. Who is this guy? Why is he helping her? She was full of doubts. She thought about it for a while and decided to sell out her own house. She could buy a smaller house and use the remaining money to see if she could revive her company again. After all, she only managed to buy her current house and car thanks to the money earned by his training company. She would not be contented to give up like this. She made up her mind to pack up her things and check out. Then she would contact the real estate agency to sell her house. Chuck looked at his mobile phone and gave a worried smile. Yevette didn't accept the money transferred to her. At least he finally managed to become friends with Yevette, and even managed to chat with her so casually. Unfortunately, it was not a face-to-face conversation. Chuck thought to himself, if Yevette was really facing problems, she would definitely ask him for help. Then he could help her. Soon he got to the real estate agency. When the employee saw Chuck coming over, he immediately served him tea and gave him a seat. He had made a lot of money this month. Chuck was definitely his god of prosperity. "Mr. Cannon, please wait for a moment. The owner will come soon," the employee said politely. Chuck nodded. There was nothing to worry about. After all, it was almost the holidays and there was no class this morning. However, after playing with his mobile phone for a while, he suddenly saw Yevette's car at the door. He was shocked. No way. Was Richard already so high-tech for her to be able to track him down? Don't panic, it's impossible. But why is Yevette here? Is she selling her house? Jack took a deep breath and hurriedly said that he needed to go to the washroom before dashing inside. He carefully looked out and saw Yevette coming in with a bag. The other employees immediately served her politely. Her clothes were not cheap, so everyone could see that Yevette had purchasing power. With only a few words, the employee had Yevette sign some documents before driving off in her car. Chuck walked out and asked, what was the pretty lady doing? She wanted to sell her house. He was speechless. Was Yevette really selling her house? Is her company facing that much hardship? They didn't talk much before, so Chuck naturally didn't know her situation. He didn't expect it to be like this. Soon the owner of the house that Chuck wanted to buy dropped by. He went out this real estate middleman to complete some paperwork documents until late afternoon. Finally, Chuck had his own house. Mind him, a few days ago he was still fretting over what to eat. But now it felt so good having a baller as a mom. Back at the agency, Chuck asked the staff who had just returned from Yevette's house. The staff said the pretty lady just now was selling her house. 3 rooms, 130 square meters. According to market price, it would cost about $1.2 million. She said that if she could be paid all the money at once, there could be a discount up to $50,000. That means it can be taken care of with $1.2 million. Chuck's eyes flashed. Are you interested, Mr. Cannon? The employee's eyes lit up. It was not a big deal for a person who could pay out $3 million at once to buy another house. Wait, I will make a phone call and ask. Chuck took out his mobile phone to call his mother and it was quickly connected. Chucky! Mom, I still want some money, he said. Okay, Mom will transfer you $10 million now. His mother chuckled. Mom, I'm using it to buy a house. I didn't have enough money, so that's why. Chuck explained hesitantly. No need to give any reasons. If my son wants to spend money, just spend it. Remember, I'm your mom. I will give you as much as you want. Chuck's eyes reddened. He never felt the warmth of parents since young. But now that he had, Chuck felt warm inside. Although it was normal for moms to be like this, he still felt like he was dreaming. Thank you, Mom. Silly child, I will transfer it to you now. The call ended in less than 10 minutes. Chuck received a message on his mobile phone indicating that he had just received $10 million. Together with the remaining money in his account, he now had about $11.3 million. Chuck took a deep breath and walked up to the employee before announcing, "Call her now and say that someone wants to buy her house."